are and provide travel options directly to you. The administration is already rapidly chartering flights free of charge and booking commercial options, which we expect to become increasingly available as time goes on and the success of this mission further comes to fruition. I know the President and Secretary of State Rubio have been in touch as well with our allies in the region directly about this problem, making it clear that it is a priority of the United States of America to bring every American home. The Trump administration will not rest until every American is home safely and until the terrorist threat from Iran has been completely destroyed. With that, I'll take your questions. Eric, why don't you kick us off today? Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here. As you mentioned, Iran's regime, its leadership has largely been decimated. Do we have a sense right now of who is actually calling the shots in Iran? And we're also hearing reports that the Supreme Leader's son may be named his successor. Do you have any more information about that? I just had a quick follow-up as well.
Sure. We've seen those reports as well, of course, and this is something that our intelligence agencies are closely monitoring and looking at. The truth is, we'll have to wait and see. The president has said repeatedly that the objectives of Operation Epic Fury are the 4 military objectives that I laid out for you previously: to destroy Iran's navy, to destroy their ballistic missile capacity, to ensure their proxies in the region can no longer harm Americans, and to also ensure that they can never obtain a nuclear weapon. As for what comes next for Iran, the president has said, of course, it's a good thing for the United States to want freedom for the Iranian people, and ultimately we hope that freedom rests in their hands.
Caroline, we see the Arab and Muslim nations coming under fire as well. President Trump's vision for the region has been to bring the Arab and Muslim nations to the table together, Abraham Accords, obviously, with Israel. If this regime topples, could we see a new day in the region and really a new Middle East come out of this when the dust settles?
Well, the greatest deterrent to true and long-lasting peace in the Middle East has always been the rogue Iranian terrorist regime. And our Arab and Gulf partners in the nation admit that, as well as, of course, our close friend and ally Israel. We have seen all of the Arab partners in the region come together during this time on the phone with President Trump, many of them commending him for this bold and brave action to protect American troops and our bases in the region that are housed in many of these Arab and Gulf states. And I know that many of these regional partners are contributing their air defense capabilities as well: Jordan, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, and the president continues to be engaged with all of them. Welcome. Garrett.
Also, too, Phil, humor me. Axios, I think, was the first to report this morning this phone call between the president and Prime Minister Netanyahu, saying that Netanyahu had given the U.S. this information about where the Ayatollah would be and that he'd be with his deputies on Saturday. How important was that information in the president making the decision to strike where and when he did?
I think it was important with respect to the timeline. But I think the president, prior to that phone call, had a good feeling that the Iranian regime was going to strike the United States assets and our personnel in the region. And the president was faced with a choice. Does the United States of America use our military and our capabilities to strike first, to take out this threat that has been threatening our country and our people for 47 years? Or is he going to, as commander-in-chief, sit back and watch as the rogue Iranian regime attacks our people in the region? That's obviously an unacceptable decision. For the second choice there is unacceptable to the president, which is why he made this decision. As for where the Ayatollah was going to be, that obviously had an impact on the timeline of the operation, but not quite the president's decision in its entirety.
And then on the way the public is viewing this, we were sitting here last week. I asked you if the president was going to make this a big part of the State of the Union, if he felt like he had to sell the possibility that he'd do strikes like this. We're now 5 days on. He hasn't done kind of the traditional speech to the nation part of it. Does the president believe the country supports the actions that he's taken so far in Iran?
I think he does. And I think the president knows the country is smart enough to read past many of the fake news headlines produced by people in this room that this action was unjustifiable. Again, this is a rogue terrorist regime that has been threatening the United States, our allies, and our people for 47 years. And the American people are smart enough to know that. And they've also been smart enough to listen to the president himself, not just over the past year in this second term, but during his first term as president, and also for the past 40 years of his life. This is a president who has been remarkably consistent on this issue, that Iran can never obtain a nuclear weapon. And the president tried peace through diplomacy exhaustively and extensively. He and his team gave it their best go, and the president ultimately came to the determination of that peace was not a pursuable path. The Iranian regime, they want death, they want destruction, they want to kill Americans, and that's unacceptable to this president. It's intolerable to him as commander-in-chief. Jackie.
Thank you, Caroline. Obviously, seen the update from the State Department on the 17,500 Americans that have already come back, including some 8,000 just yesterday. There are still 6,000 that are looking to get out, as I understand it. And just in the context of what you just told Garrett about the president's decision on a timeline, if he had decided to do this strike before receiving, the specific intelligence about the meeting on Saturday, should there have been more done in advance of the strikes to try to get those Americans in the region resources and information to get home before day 3 of the war?
There was many signs put out by the State Department, and I wish that everyone in this room would report on them. The Secretary of State issued level 4 travel advisories dating back to January for many of these countries in the region. On January 14th, the U.S. mission to Saudi Arabia advised personnel and Americans to exercise increased caution and limit non-essential travel to any military installations. On February 11th, the U.S. Department of State Consular Affairs shared a list of countries with level 4 do not travel advisories. You can't be much more clear than that. Do not travel to these following countries. On February 23rd, the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon ordered non-emergency government personnel and family members to leave Lebanon due to safety risks, and we helped them do that. On March 2nd, the State Department urged U.S. citizens to depart Lebanon immediately. With respect to Iran, on February 27th, the Secretary designated Iran as a state of sponsor of wrongful detention and stated no American should travel to Iran for any reason. And again, on February 27th, the U.S. ambassador to Israel warned Americans to leave Iran, and they provided travel advisory alerts through the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. So the State Department was all hands on deck on advising extreme caution and do not travel alerts to Americans in the region. With respect to the Americans who are still in the region now, again, the State Department is asking that they register at the website so they can directly identify you. And we are actively and rapidly working to charter flights. There is some commercial flights that are taking off intermittently from these countries, and we plan to get Americans on board as quickly as possible, again, free of charge to them. And we have some additional measures that I think will be announced in the coming days. Again, I can also reiterate from the president's perspective, this is something he's brought up directly with our allies and partners in the region, that we expect their help in getting Americans home, and we will do that, and we will not rest until every single American is returned home safely.
Thank you. And then one follow-up just on how people might be experiencing this at home. With respect to the economy and the cost of oil spiking, is there a need to start those Navy escorts in the Strait of Hormuz now to sort of blunt the impact to people? And also, because Spain is a member of the EU, does that at all put a wrinkle in the president's plan for a trade embargo with them?
With respect to Spain, I think they heard the president's message yesterday loud and clear. And it's my understanding over the past several hours, they've agreed to cooperate with the U.S. military. And so I know that the U.S. military is coordinating with their counterparts in Spain. But the president expects all of our European allies, of course, to cooperate in this long sought after mission, not just for the United States, but also for Europe, to crush the rogue Iranian regime that, again, not only threatens America, but also threatens our European allies as well. With respect to oil prices and the economy here at home, of course, this is something that Secretary Bessent, Secretary Wright, the National Economic Council of Energy, that is led by Secretary Burgum, has been long working on and well in advance. Yesterday, President Trump announced the U.S. Development Finance Corporation will provide political risk insurance at a very reasonable price for crude carriers and cargo ships operating in and around the Gulf. And as you pointed out, Jackie, the president said, if necessary and when appropriate, the U.S. Navy will begin escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. I think it speaks to why this action was so necessary, that ultimately the energy industry is going to benefit from the president's actions with respect to Iran, because Iran will no longer be controlling the Strait of Hormuz and restricting the free flow of energy, which, as you all know, controls 20% of the world's global oil supply. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. The president said yesterday there wasn't time to make evacuation plans because this all happened so quickly. Given how critical the president has been of the chaotic evacuation from Afghanistan by the last administration 5 years ago, why wasn't there more of a focus on evacuation plans from the Middle East that could have been at least put in place, ready to go before the strikes this weekend?
Again, I just laid out for you that there have been plans in place and that the State Department has been very clear to the American people traveling within this region not to travel to these regions. We gave notices to leave immediately the countries where these Americans were within. And unlike the previous administration, we actually have a number. We actually have identified the number of people in the region who have requested help. We are in direct contact and engagement with them. And you have to keep in mind, there's a few thousand people who have requested assistance to come home in comparison to the millions who we understand are in the region. So we will help every single American who wants to come home if they're making that request of the State Department.
Americans who called the State Department hotline as recently as last night were being told, we can't help you, you have to make your own plans.
Well, the line was updated, and I expect every single person in this room to report on that accurately so that information can be relayed appropriately to your audiences and to the American people. I think as journalists, you all have a responsibility to let them know that the line has been updated accordingly with the proper guidance, because I saw many people in this room very quick to do selfie videos with the line yesterday, but not so quick to report on the corrected message today. So that is something the administration quickly worked to address, and we have fixed that problem. However, we're also pointing to people to the website, again, to register so that we know exactly where you are. So when there are commercial flights moving into that area, when there are chartered flights moving into that area, we can get Americans on planes as quickly as
Do you
possible.
have any details on how many charter flights have been able to get out of the region so far with Americans on board?
I don't have an exact count for you, but I know that we're working on chartering many flights. As soon as we were doing it yesterday, we're doing it again today. And you should not expect us to detail exactly when these flights are taking off for obvious reasons. The Iranians have shown that they are not going to hesitate to target civilians in the region, which is completely intolerable. But for safety and security reasons, we're not going to be broadcasting when flights full of Americans are going to be taking off, obviously. Danny.
At the top there, you said that the Iranian regime is being absolutely crushed. Can you explicitly say then whether or not regime change is a goal of President Trump's operation?
The goals of this operation have been made very clear, Danny, and the president has said them in his speech when he launched this operation and released that video in the middle of the night to all of you and to the world. The stated military objectives of Operation Epic Fury are as follows: eliminate Iran's ballistic missile threat, destroy their naval capability, disrupt missile and drone production infrastructure, sever their pathway, and end their pathway to nuclear weapons. And I can report, as you all saw from the Pentagon today, that thus far this operation has been remarkably successful. Again, we're moving towards complete and total control of Iranian airspace. We have continuous 24/7 strike operations ongoing. We've had more than 2,000 targets that have been struck, nearly 2,000 munitions have been employed. The first 24 hours of this campaign were described nearly as twice the scale of the 2003 shock and awe campaign. And we've seen that the enemy, the Iranian rogue regime, their retaliatory strikes against the United States, and the threat reduction has reduced significantly. If you look at the Iranian ballistic missile launches, they're down 86% from day one levels. So while the United States military continues to increase its complete dominance over this rogue regime, they are weakening day by day.
Regime change is not a phrase that you would want to use.
Again, Operation Epic Fury, I just detailed the goals and objectives of this very quickly. But obviously, as the president has said numerous times, do we want to see Iran being led by a rogue terrorist regime? No, of course not. So any day the United States of America is taking out a terrorist is a good day for our country and a good day for our people.
Given that point that you just make about the United States, wouldn't mind seeing the government overthrown. Certainly President Trump has talked about wanting to see Iranians overthrow the government. Has the president considered at all kind of how he views a U.S. role, if any, in Iran post-conflict?
I think it's something the president is actively considering and discussing with his advisors and his national security team. But again, right now, the focus minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day is on ensuring the quick and effective success of Operation Epic Fury. Sure, go ahead.
I want to ask you about the U.S. munitions
I
stockpile.
don't even know who's speaking because I wasn't looking at you.
No.
You can ask a question and then I'll go to you.
I want to ask you about the U.S. munitions stockpile. President Trump posted on Truth Social on Monday that the U.S. still has a good supply of weapons, but that we still we're not where we need to be. What does he mean by that? And does President Trump then want to ask on Congress to pass a supplemental to increase funding for missile interceptor systems like the ones being used to defend U.S. bases in the Middle East from Iranian missiles?
I don't have any updates for you on congressional asks from the president. As you know, under this president, we have significantly increased our defense budget, which is a good thing for the United States, for our national security, and for protecting our homeland. With respect to munitions, ammunition, weapon stockpiles, the United States of America has more than enough capability to not only successfully execute Operation Epic Fury, but to go much further. And we have weapon stockpiles in places that many people in this world don't even know about. However, the president in that post was pointing out that unfortunately, we had a very stupid and incompetent leader in this White House for 4 years who gave away many of our best weapons for nothing, for free, to another country very far away by the name of Ukraine. So the president was pointing out how that was an unwise decision, but nevertheless, don't doubt the strength and the might of the American military. And I will also add, President Trump has rightfully been calling on defense contractors in this country to rapidly and aggressively produce American-made weapons because they are the best in the world. And the president always likes to get things done as quickly as possible. And so he's been quite vocal in his efforts to try to speed up our defense industry to protect our homeland.
Caroline, I'm going to do some.
Go ahead.
Caroline, could you tell us about the president's current thinking about ground troops and whether they could be used if they were to be sent into Iran? What would they be used for? What's the situation on that?
Well, they're not part of the plan for this operation at this time, but I certainly will never take away military options on behalf of the president of